Who are the players you should be targeting on the waiver wire for the final week of the 2021 regular season in fantasy football? It's time to find out right here and right now as Pickup Tuesday begins for the last time this season on Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We're here. It's Week 18, returning the page. We'll put a bow on Week 17. For many of you, the championship of fantasy football regular season. Some of you are playing into Week 18. We're going to help you out there. You can also look at DFS, whether you won or lost your league there in the championship round. At DFS, good time to try it here in Week 18, try to navigate through some of the teams resting players and whatnot here with things locked up for reality here in the NFL. So we'll break that down for you, the players that you can pick up as targets that are interesting this week. And a little bit different, given that some teams are not going to be playing guys. They're going to be careful with guys that are hurt and all that. And we'll try to dig deep here to give you guys to plug and play on the waiver wire here in Week 18. We'll also break down the Browns-Steelers game. Some good results there, some not so good there. If you were counting on something in that game to come through, one player in particular went off, and we'll break that down for you. Before we dive into all that, our MNF reaction and our Pickup Tuesday look at the waiver wire. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. All right, let's look at Browns-Steelers. Really, it was the Najee Harris show. I mean, he had the long touchdown there at the end of the game while they're running off the clock, so that really helped his stats. It made it a spectacular day. It was already very good here, but he pushed over 200 yards from scrimmage and 28 carries here. He was all over the Browns. So we knew it was going to be a battle of the two running backs, Najee Harris and Nick Chubb. Unfortunately, the Steelers controlled both this game. The Browns could not stay on the field, so that contained Chubb here. But Harris goes off. Chubb had one long run early in the game, but pretty much was controlled for the rest of it. And really, Cleveland's offense dragged everything down here at the end, and that's what we saw with Baker Mayfield. 2 interceptions more here for him. The Browns were already eliminated when they stepped on the field, so not a lot of motivation to play at a high level in this one. And they were in a lot of bad down and distance situations, too. On top of the negative game script, they were down 10-0 early, never could really get going here until very late in garbage time with Baker Mayfield. So it was really bad performance by Cleveland's offense, but that's been the norm all season long here. So not too much of a surprise, but it was a bummer that it also brought down Chubb in this great matchup on paper against Pittsburgh. Now, the other side, the Browns are pretty good against the run, but they've been banged up front. The Steelers' offensive line played pretty well in run blocking. They're also very emotionally powered here because it's Ben Roethlisberger's last game. It was that. I mean, there were suggestions and hints to that, but he emotionally broke down. The walk-off from the field and all the time he took taking a lap around the stadium. This is it for Ben Roethlisberger. So we'll see how it happens going forward with this quarterback situation. Very good receiving core. We know that. Deontay Johnson, great year as a wide receiver too. Very consistent. Didn't get a lot of volume in this game in terms of yardage, but made 8 catches count. Also had a touchdown in this one there from Big Ben. So again, Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, whoever inherits these weapons is going to have a chance to have success. And don't forget about Harris out of the backfield. But Roethlisberger really faded, was not usable in fantasy for much of this season. Not really in this game either. The touchdowns came from Harris and Johnson. So it was a good performance by the Steelers D. We recommended them, remember, over the Browns D because they were at home. Emotional night. Road underdogs or road favorites the Browns were, and the Steelers came through as the home night underdogs. We love those teams in that position, and the Steelers definitely delivered there. as much as you could expect here with their limited offense here, with Harris being the centerpiece here in Week 17. So congratulations. If Najee Harris was the guy that put you over the top in your fantasy football leagues, it's exciting to have it all come down to Monday night. But yeah, he took over and he had his most dominant performance, I think, in weeks here overall, really taking over and proving that he's going to be a big-time fantasy football asset there in 2022. All right, in our first segment, we'll hit quarterbacks here on the waiver wire. Then we'll look at running backs and defenses. Then we'll close with wide receivers and tight ends. So we'll go to potential stack players as well that you can look at in DFS as 1 week plays on top of that, because we know you're looking at the waiver wire with the intent of playing somebody at this point, not to stash on your team. Maybe you have a little bit of COVID-19 insurance that you want to stash, but you should have already done that here going into Week 18. All right, quarterbacks. Looks like Tyler Huntley could be starting again for the Ravens against the Steelers here. The Steelers do have something to play for. So do the Ravens. So that's good motivation. Tyler Huntley doing well with his legs here to produce. I would think they'd be careful with Lamar Jackson. They were going to try to get him in the lineup as much as possible, but if he can't go, the ankle has been pretty pesky here. We thought it could be a little bit of a long-term injury. He's been missed out 3 games. Easily could be a 4th here. So Tyler Huntley, good plug and play here. He might have been dropped ahead of that Rams matchup because he missed the previous game on COVID-19 because of Josh Johnson. If he's out there again, a pretty good play against the Steelers here at home in the finale. Trey Lance looked really good in the second half. He got going there with a couple touchdown passes, one to Elijah Mitchell, one to Deebo Samuel against the Texans. This week, he gets the Rams, a little bit of a tougher defense that we saw Huntley face, but Lance in the running is a big part of what he does. It wasn't huge last week, but it was enough there to help pad his stats in the passing game with the 2 touchdowns. So Lance is coming into his own. The 49ers have had a lot of great success moving the ball offensively on the Rams. It doesn't matter who's been quarterback. Remember that Jimmy Garoppolo missed most of last season. They were still able to have success moving it on the Rams last year. So they just have their number. Kyle Shanahan against that defense. Defense not as good as it was last year. So Lance is going to be up for his big chance here. We assume Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be out. They said there's a chance he could return with the right thumb injury. We know Kyle Shanahan is going to lean toward the veteran here with the playoffs on the line, but right now we feel that right thumb is a hard thing to get over. Lance should be the starter. So the running quarterbacks, we've talked about the cheat codes here in fantasy football. It gives you that built-in floor. We've seen it with Taysom Hill as well. So when you add a few more running quarterbacks to the mix, it's really nice to see. Now, one quarterback about to get a second start for the Packers is Jordan Love. There's no way the Packers are going to risk Aaron Rodgers with that toe injury. They're coming off the COVID-19 after effect, side effect, whatever you want to call it. He's played through it. He's been very limited practice there, really missing a lot of practice. So they're not going to mess around with Aaron Rodgers with the number 1 seed locked up. Good chance to see more of Jordan Love just in case there's a breakup from Aaron Rodgers next year. That may be less of a case now with the way things have harmoniously gone here this season in 2021 and the extension and the new money he got. So Jordan Love also a chance to showcase him here for the Packers if they have to move him and keep Rodgers happy that way this offseason. So good opportunity. Why do we like him? Why do we like Love? Well, he's playing the Lions on the road. The Lions defense was atrocious last week. They just went into the tank there against the combination of Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, and Rashad Penny. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for these backup Packers to be rather successful in this game, and the Lions as well, because they'll see a lot of backup Packers defenders. So looks like Jordan Love is going to be in there. And again, he can run a little bit as well, not as big a part of his game as Huntley and Lance, but still good enough to pad the stats for him in this spot. You could figure that he could get to 2 touchdowns easily in this game, playing off the running game that should be very successful in Detroit. Also nice to not worry about the weather in that game. Now, Gardner Minshew looks like he might get the start as well. I think the Eagles should be careful with Jalen Hurts. They've locked up the number 6 or 7 seed in the NFC playoffs. They're right now number 7, but could move up if the 49ers lose there, and they would have the tiebreaker over the Saints. So they really can't move up beyond that because the Cardinals are looming there at number 5. So not a lot to play for the Eagles. They got to get a lot of their guys healthy. We know Miles Sanders is already hurt. Now they got some running backs in the COVID-19 protocol. So when you look at that, Minshew makes a lot of sense to put him in the lineup this week as the starter for the Eagles. He played really well in the first matchup. They were also having some COVID-19 issues at tight end. So I think they'll be fine and cleared and have most of their key weapons there for Minshew. And keep in mind the Cowboys also are thinking about resting players on the other side of this matchup. That's why the Cowboys are only 3-point favorites here on the road. They're not really going to play, I don't think, for the 2 or 3 seed here with number 1 out of reach because the Packers have locked that up. So if that's the case, that's going to be a further break here for Minshew in this game if you want to stream him for 1 week. Now, I also kind of like Matt Ryan this week. I know every time we kind of like Matt Ryan, he underwhelms. He doesn't get enough TD passes here, but he's at home. That's the number one good thing. He's facing the Saints. The Saints defense has been pretty tough, but the Falcons will be spoiler-minded here in this finale. So I think Matt Ryan, even if the Falcons are trailing in this one, could have some garbage points against the Saints because he absolutely cannot run on the Saints that well. So that also helps Matt Ryan's cause. But clearly he's behind all these other guys that I would look to. So if Minshew plugs and plays there, I like him better than Matt Ryan. So that kind of tells you something there. But definitely focus on Huntley, Lance, and Love. If Huntley plays, Lance and Love can be pretty good for you this week here as deep league streamers and maybe DFS bargain plays as well for you. All right, we'll get into the running backs, defenses, wide receivers, and tight ends in our final 2 segments here on Locked On Fantasy Football. It's a Pickup Tuesday. Hey, fantasy football fans, this is Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinnie Iyer with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about, Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use the promo code TOUCHDOWN and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon in your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people drive a lot, are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back. There's no catch. There is a lot of cash. There's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon or other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That's TOUCHDOWN there to get and take advantage of that offer at Get Upside. All right, we will continue the show here, breaking down the running backs and defenses to look at for plug and plays off the waiver wire here in Week 18. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. All right, running back. So we'll see what the Washington football team does with Antonio Gibson. I know he missed last week's game on the COVID-19 list, and Jaret Patterson filled in really well against the Eagles. So we'll see if they want to put Gibson in for this finale. The Washington football team technically had playoff possibilities in that game against the Eagles. So now that they don't, that they might be judicious here with the usage of Gibson or just maybe shut him down here. I mean, he's had a shin injury, a toe injury, a hip injury. He was on the COVID-19 list last week. That's a lot for a player to manage in one season, and a lot of it in the back half playing off the shin that plagued him in the first half. So they just might be careful. Want to see a little bit more out of Jaret Patterson here in this offense. He looked very good. We know he was very productive at Buffalo. That's in college, not in the NFL. So this is a very special back with some very nice capacity to be a good all-around back. Unfortunately, he's going to have to play behind Gibson here, but I think he'll get an opportunity. I think the Washington football team didn't really miss a beat without Gibson last week. So I think it makes sense to give Patterson another start here if needed. Now, that's where I'm going to look at. So just be wary that Gibson does not play, because if Gibson does, then Patterson is much less appeal, of course, as a plug and play this week. Now, Eagles, as I mentioned, having a bit of a COVID-19 issue at running back. So they might err on the side of caution here. It's a meaningless game for them against the Cowboys. So you have Miles Sanders still dealing with a fractured hand. You have Boston Scott and Jordan Howard. So it could be a Kenneth Gainwell game. So people will probably be off Gainwell, looking at it was mainly Scott and Howard last week. there, but it was also Scott scoring twice, and the game was at least an even game script. Then they got a positive game script here. Gainwell might just have to be the guy by default. They might want to see what they have in Gainwell as well, because he, unlike Scott and Howard, that can be a dynamic back that can be down there consistently for 3 downs. So all that stuff lines up to say Gainwell's the guy that they would want to look at. So Patterson, Gainwell, 2 very productive college backs here in the NFC East, maybe getting expanded roles here in Week 18. Now, there's a couple of situations we need to navigate through based on injuries. The one is in Tampa, where Ronald Jones came out of that Jets game hurting. So they don't have Leonard Fournette for the rest of the season, regular season, which is one more game at this point. They hope to get him back for the playoffs. What we saw last week, a lot of Le'Veon Bell getting involved in comeback mode. You also had Keyshawn Vaughn getting some early carries. The Bucs are playing the Panthers at home this week. Now, I'm not sure exactly how much the Bucs are going to play people in this game, but they got to play someone at running back, and they're down to these 2 guys at this point with Fournette not available, Gio Bernard not available. I don't think they're going to risk Jones in this game. So that says they're going to have a Bell-Vaughn backfield. We know the Panthers have kind of wilted against the run here, give a pretty big game out of scrimmage yards for Alvin Kamara last week. So an opportunity. I think it'll be a split right down the middle. Bell is the veteran, and they could trust him a little bit more there. Vaughn's the youngster. They want to see what they have with these guys. So I'd say Vaughn would end up getting more touches if Jones indeed is rested in this game, and Bell giving some complimentary work. Both of them are adept at catching passes, but Bell a little bit better there. So I think Bell might be relegated to the pure passing situations, and Vaughn seeing most of the other touches here, if that's the case, without Jones against the Panthers. Now, another toss-up here is Austin Walter versus Ty Johnson. We don't expect Micah Carter to be cleared from his concussion, and if he is, I think the Jets would think about protecting their young talent here. He's just such a dynamic playmaker out of the backfield. So I think they would lean toward, okay, let's let him rest and get him back here in 2022. And we've already had him have an ankle injury as well that he's played through and all that. So I think that would be the smarter choice here. But again, he still could clear concussion protocol and play, but it's tough to do that here in this short turnaround. So if I'm going to go with one back here, it is a very tough matchup against the Bills. I'm going to go with Ty Johnson because the game script is probably going to be negative here. So that doesn't mean regular touches for Austin Walter in the traditional running game. So Johnson did score as a receiver last week. So keep that in mind. They're throwing a lot of short passes to Johnson, Braxton Berrios, and all that from Zach Wilson. So keep that in mind. So in the Bucs situation without Jones, I would go Vaughn over Bell. In the Jet situation without Carter, I would go Johnson over Walter based on the matchups there. Now, you can also look at Dontrell Hilliard. He might be picked up in a lot of leagues because he's been pretty complimentary productive to Dante Foreman, but I think he's going to get another nice workload here. I think the Titans will run all over the Texans. The Texans have been destroyed by the Chargers and 49ers on the ground. So Dontrell Hilliard, a lot of appeal here with trickle-down production there, supplementing what Foreman does, much like the Miami game. We saw it also early in the season against New England. So this Houston game against another weak run defense also makes sense. Duke Johnson, speaking of New England, the Patriots have struggled a little bit more against the run. They give up some catches to running backs. That's part of the checkdowns, the negative game script here, and also can be vulnerable to just being run against. So we look at Duke Johnson. He's looked pretty good for Miami that first game out. Last 2, not so good here, but tough run defenses of the Saints and Titans here. He's still getting volume. He's a talented all-around back here. I think he's got way more appeal than Myles Gaskin and Phillip Lindsay and some of the other guys that they have in this backfield. So Duke might be playing for a job here in Miami, or at least a complimentary role to if they draft a back or stick with Gaskin in 2022. They want to see a little bit more of him. He's a Miami Hurricane product, so he'll be motivated to run well at home here. So he's going to also get it done in the passing game. We know that was his specialty in Cleveland, and we know that the Patriots gave up a big game receiving-wise to Dare Ogunbowale last week of the Jaguars, the only bright spot for the Jaguars. So you figure even if Miami struggles in other places, Johnson can be effective. Now, Nyheim Hines could get some key touches here. We'll see about that. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch here If you don't have Jonathan Taylor, if you have Taylor, there's no way you can play Taylor and Hines. But if you're reaching a little bit and hoping that the Colts will blow out the Jaguars and run all over them and run for 200, 250 yards in this game, Hines might have some trickle down there from Taylor. So a little deep there. But two other guys that you can look at, Patrick Taylor. He's the third string running back for the Packers right now on their depth chart behind Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. There's no way they're going to play Aaron Jones this game. He's got a knee injury that he's been playing through the past several weeks. A.J. Dillon, they also have to protect because he's pretty much a co-starter with Jones and a key red zone guy for them in the playoffs. So Patrick Taylor should eat up a lot of the carries here and touches against the Lions here in a very good matchup. Lions were absolutely mauled by Rashad Penny last week, as we mentioned. Jordan Love as well. So Love and Taylor might be the guys that produce a lot for the Packers this week in the roles of Rodgers and Jones. And then finally, Corey Clement is a guy that we're looking at here of the Cowboys now. And you look at Ezekiel Elliott, he's got a knee injury. You got Tony Pollard, he's had a foot injury. These guys are just recovering from that. So in week 18, a good way to tell now of players that might be rested or people with any kind of injury listing, even if they don't have an official questionable, doubtful designation. If they practice with some tag like that in the probable range, they're probably going to be benched here. So Corey Clement, also revenge game for Corey Clement. The Eagles could be resting players as well with Gardner Minshew on the other side. So, yeah, this is where you have to dig deep a little bit. You got to anticipate what teams are going to do. But Packers, for sure, we know they're resting players. The Cowboys are probably leaning that way as well for their game with Philadelphia, especially with Philadelphia resting players. And Dallas might have a rematch against Philadelphia or Arizona here, a recent opponent, one of their last two opponents in the first round of the playoffs. So you don't want to give away too much for the rematches against these teams. And in the case of the Eagles game, it would be a 3-match, playing them a third time. So both these teams are going to be very careful with what they show against each other. And I would expect a lot of backups playing there for Dallas and Philadelphia. Now for defenses, the easy streamers are the Chiefs. They're on the road against the Broncos, but the Broncos are totally terrible now. Chiefs may have been dropped because of some of their tougher matchups of late, but they should get back right on track after being blown up by Jamar Chase and the Bengals last week. The Titans just destroyed the Dolphins, so good spot for them against the Texans on the road. And the Washington football team, they have the Giants offense completely given up here. Mike Glennon probably being shut down for them. So Jake Fromm, Washington football team defense, lines up really well. So really three great options here this week: Kansas City, Tennessee, and Washington for defense and special teams there. And also excellent DFS targets as well for your lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel. All right, we will close with wide receivers and tight ends you can target there for the final week of the 2021 regular season for fantasy football. Week 18. Can't believe we actually have a week 18, but it's here, and the season's come to an end. It's unbelievable here. BetOnline has you covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the College Bowl season, which just completed, except for, of course, the big one, the CFP championship game. And we also have the NFL playoffs just around the corner. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the website or use a mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, so don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, let's close the show here looking at wide receiver and tight end targets here for you. Meet Cyril Grayson. He's an undrafted guy from 2017. What did he do last week? Antonio Brown storms off, takes off his shirt, takes off his padding, runs off, ends his career as a Buck in totally dysfunctional manner. Cyril Grayson comes in, plays the role of Antonio Brown, scores the game-winning touchdown on a long 33-yard pass from Tom Brady. Looked good doing it. He was the leading receiver in the game for Tampa. So the way Tampa goes, they have to put someone out there wide receiver. So I think they'll be careful with Mike Evans with that hamstring that he was already on a snap count last week. So I think you're going to see a combination of Tyler Johnson probably working the slot, Cyril Grayson outside as a deep threat, and Brashad Perriman against the Panthers. So that's going to be your starting group here. Grayson has the most upside here, especially if Tom Brady plays for a little bit. I would expect they pivot over to Blaine Gabbert at some point if the Bucs are in control of this game. But Grayson and Brady seem to have the best connection there downfield over the Johnson-Perryman guys. I mean, Johnson was pretty good, effective as well. He's also had a game-winning touchdown in the game not too long ago, so keep that in mind with Tyler Johnson. Rashad Perryman was a super sub for Evans and Godwin just 2 years ago. They're helping out Jameis Winston, so there are some upside with these guys, but I feel like there's a bit of a Grayson connection there with Brady, so that's what I'm feeling here. So he's a guy that should be picked up in most leagues here. If you're looking for a plug and play here for week 18, makes a lot of sense there. However, the quarterback situation plays out over the other two guys, Johnson and Perriman. Johnson, I think, is more of a reach play with kind of a limited floor and a very low ceiling here. Perriman a little bit touchdown dependent on the outside. And we'll see. The Panthers may get Stephon Gilmore back this week. That could really hurt Perriman in this one. They were pretty bad last week, so keep that in mind. That Marquez Callaway and this rest of this Saints weak wide receiver core had some success. So you figure a group even as low as Grayson, Johnson, and Perriman can do some damage here if Tom Brady plays enough in this game. Now, let's go to the Jets. I mean, Braxton Berrios is probably the last call for him. I mean, he's had two very nice games. He's kind of a jack of all trades here that they've used a Patriot style. He is a former Patriot, so he did have the return touchdown 2 weeks ago. He had a rushing touchdown last week. He is a guy that they're getting the ball in the hands to with Jamison Crowder out. They don't have Corey Davis. They don't have Elijah Moore, so they got to throw to someone. Berrios has been the guy that Zach Wilson has trusted most. So last call for him. Probably last call for Allen Lazard here. He might be picked up in a lot of leagues, but I think you'll see a little bit of the backups as well here. I mean, they're not going to play Devontae Adams. So Allen Lazard technically is a starter. I know they have other receivers here that the Packers will look at. Probably some Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Equanimeous St. Brown, seeing a little bit more run in this game. So, but if Lazard is still out there, despite scoring here in multiple weeks, he is a plug and play this week, of course, against the Lions there. I would expect Lazard plays again. They need to have enough wide receivers. They need to give Love a decent look here. So I bet he plays at least a little bit this week. Again, Equanimeous St. Brown could be out there a lot with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So the brothers St. Brown might be the busiest receivers in this game. So somebody to look at there. So Lazard's available, and if he's starting, you go there. If he's not, you can look at St. Brown having some value there for Green Bay. Marquez Callaway, we mentioned him, last call for him. I mean, he got a big break last week. I played him in a league because I needed a third wide receiver. He came through for me nicely. So Callaway, the matchups have been good. And when he has Taysom Hill, he usually is pretty productive. So we've seen that here because Hill has a big arm, which is something that people forget. And Callaway is a field-stretching receiver. So good break last week with the depleted Panthers secondary. This week, he gets the Falcons secondary. We'll see if he gets a little A.J. Terrell here in this game. But Callaway's clearly Hill's most trusted receiver, and you have to treat him that way. Now, what do you do with the Cowboys receivers? Well, I think they'll be careful as well. Amari Cooper battles through some injury. We know that Michael Gallup is down for the season with a torn ACL. You have a CeeDee Lamb. He's battled through some injuries this season as well. So I think they'll be very careful. You probably see a combination of Cedric Wilson here and Malik Turner. And we know both these guys can produce here as complementary weapons, but they can also do the job as primary weapons if needed. There's a chance Cooper rush plays. And remember, he has a good chemistry with Wilson and Turner there from his backup duties behind Dak Prescott. So everything kind of lines up when you play all the backups and you have injuries and you have to go in that direction here. So, yeah, I would play Cedric Wilson for sure here as a wide receiver 3 with some upside here in this matchup. And Turner in deeper leagues, if that ends up being the case and they don't play Cooper and Lamb, he's going to have good starting value in this game against the Eagles as well. As you figure, Eagles will also be careful with Darius Slay and some of their other key defensive players in this game, as well as their offensive starters. Christian Wilkerson looked good for the Patriots. It's a little bit of a stretch here because he just came out of nowhere. Part of it was Nelson Aguilar was on the shelf again with a concussion. N'Keal Harry had the hip injury, so they need a complementary receiver to Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne, and Wilkerson was more than that, producing twice in the red zone with touchdowns. So he's not a bad play here, but it's still more a lot of Bourne and Myers. They're Bourne on the outside, Myers on the inside here for Mac Jones. Now, Dante Wesley is another one of those pesky thorn guys that we've seen him produce. We just haven't taken him very seriously here in this offense with AJ Green, Christian Kirk, without DeAndre Hopkins. But they mentioned on the telecast when he scored a couple touchdowns there, Troy Aikman did, that he's kind of like what DeAndre Hopkins gave them. He goes up and gets the ball well. He high points it, has a good catch radius, has a good history with Cliff Kingsbury. So they're going to keep giving Wesley more chances. He woke up the offense a little bit. They really closed well in the red zone for using his big body and his hands there. So I think he's going to get some more looks here from his performance there against the Cowboys. Now, let's look at our next receiver that we can look at. It's Zay Jones. This is the last guy on our list here. Look, he had 100 yards, and you can't totally ignore that. The Raiders are playing for something against the Chargers this week. So Zay Jones, Jalen Guyton in that game have some appeal because I think that could be a high-scoring game here. And the Chargers, I know, are pretty weak against the run, better against the pass, but they have had some issues in coverage of late, and it also potential for the Chargers to blow it out here. So the Jones would be in a negative game script and see a lot of volume here from Derek Carr. All right, let's turn to the pass catchers at tight ends. We'll look at it here this week. CJ Uzomah should be busy for the Bengals. They figured rest players in Cleveland. The Browns are not very good at covering the tight end. So I think you might see limited action there for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. So a lot of maybe 2 tight end sets to kind of grind this game away for Zach Taylor with nothing on the line here for the Bengals. So CJ Uzomah has some value there. Now, another player sounds like a character from Downton Abbey, John Bates. He's now your starting tight end for the Washington football team. Logan Thomas is well on the shelf here. Ricky Seals-Jones had that scary injury last week against the Eagles. So John Bates, who did score a couple weeks ago, he's a guy that you look at in the game in this week. And John Bates is definitely a guy that you can plug and play. The Eagles give up a lot to the tight end. Cameron Brate is someone you can look at for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers there. They need receiving help there for the game against the Panthers, so look there. Anthony Ferkser did score and did produce for the Titans last week, so he's a guy that you can look at with Jeff Swaim as well to plug and play against the Texans. All right, that looks at our waiver wire here for week number 18, our final week of the regular season here. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Fantasy Football and making us your first listen every day. Don't forget, we will start looking at the games of Week 18 with Matchup Wednesday tomorrow. So the first half tomorrow, the back half of games through Saturday and Sunday on Thursday. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Starling. It's free and available on all platforms. For this edition of Locked On Fantasy Football for Pickup Tuesday, this is Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and see you tomorrow with our breakdowns of the games.